Hey, what's up, you sexy bitches, and welcome back to this week's Weekly D. And today I have one of my good friends on, Shan. Shan is also known as mcchanningtonratchet on Instagram. And Shan has actually been one of my students and has since left me. It makes me so sad. She lives in London now, and we talk about the London pole scene. We talk about what it's like being a black pole dancer within the black pole community, within the pole community, and also within the competition scene, which was something I was really intrigued to listen to. So I really hope you enjoy this episode. Without further ado, this is the Weekly D, because honey, if you ain't getting your D on the daily, you better at least be getting it once on the weekly.
If you're not getting any and you want some tea, then come and join Dan up on the Weekly D. It's the Weekly D.
Hey Shan, welcome to the Weekly D. I'm so happy to have you on. How are you doing?
I'm good. How are you?
Yeah, I'm good. For anyone who has never heard of Shan before, I want you to give us a rundown. Who is mcchanningtonratchet? Who is she? Who is that bitch? Tell them all.
Well, I am Shan. I'm a polar. I'm a instructor. I judge comps now. I used to compete, and I guess, oh yeah, and also I'm a twerk instructor. Can't forget that because I've got a huge ass. So that helps.
Yeah, but that's not why you're a twerk instructor. You're a twerk instructor because you're good at twerk, not just because you've got a huge butt. In fact, when we talk about the twerk subjects in a minute, I want to go over that actually, because I know that's like a misconstrued thing where people think if you've got a big butt, you can twerk, right? So we could talk about that. But yeah, I mean, that was a good attempt. I feel like you didn't really do yourself enough justice here, but I think you should have bigged yourself up a little bit more than that. And also for anyone listening, Shan actually used to be one of my students. She used to come to me quite a lot, still does every now and then. But she lives far, far away in London land with all the London polars. Actually, I want to talk to you about this. Have you ever noticed that in the UK, don't you find it's like London and the rest of the UK? Have you ever noticed that? It's like London have got their own pole scene. What is that about?
I feel like within London, everyone has their pole scene because you have like North London, you have, where is it, Ultimate Pole and like Camden Lot. And then you have South London, you have like Pole Fit, you have Warehouse, you have like various other studios. And then you have like East and West, which I tend to not go to East and West just because I just have no need to go there.
Is it just because it's too much of a ball ache to get to, or is it because you don't like the areas?
It's not necessarily the areas, it's more that to get from one end of London to the other, you're talking about an hour. So if I wanted to go to Ultimate Pole, like realistically, if I was to get there by train, it would take me about 45 minutes to an hour.
Do you know what? So, sorry, I'm laughing because I've got this thing. I always make jokes about it. I'm like, Londoners will travel for 20 minutes and they'll tell you it was the longest journey of their life. They're like, oh my God, this studio is so far away. It took me 20 minutes to get here. I'm like, are you freaking kidding me? Where I live, it takes me 30 minutes to get to like the local gym. It's terrible. I'm literally so far from everything. So whenever I meet people from London, they're like, oh, where's your studio? I'm like, oh, it's in Hemel Hempstead. I'm like, so you can get out of London and to Hemel. They're like, oh, I just looked it up. It's like an hour away. I'm like, is that bad? They're like, yeah, that's too far. I'm like, oh, okay. It's just, I feel like London has like this little bubble where you guys are all sort of intertwined. Do you find that causes any kind of like, like segregation? Do you have like groups?
I don't think so. Like, personally, I've never seen it. So anytime if I go to Pole Fit or if I go to like another studio, there's also Pole Fit Sutton, which is not too far from Warehouse. And Yoga James, he teaches there. So if I ever wanted to say go over there on a Monday, then it wouldn't be like a huge big, oh my God, why are you going there type thing. I think that's something that's kind of been and gone now, because I know that used to be a thing, but it's not a thing, I don't think, since COVID happened. Or maybe I'm just out the loop and I just don't know.
Yeah, I mean, I as well, and another thing that I've noticed with London, and it's just, I always say this, and like, it's so funny, it's always London. Like, there's a lot of studio drama and rivalries and stuff. I mean, it's obviously of no surprise to anyone, because I was like the last person to know anything about it, but the whole like drama around Ultimate Pole and stuff like this. There's been so many dramas there. I'm like, oh my God. And I've missed out on all of it. But when I speak to London people, I'm like, oh my God, this is crazy. I'm so glad I don't live in London.
Sometimes being on the outskirts helps you, because I'm technically like closer to Kent than I am like in London. So I'm just like, okay, I don't need to be a part of that. So I'm just going to be on my merry way and just go to my studio and do my training.
Good for you. I mean, that's the best way to be. Obviously, try and steer clear of the drama, hey. But I've noticed over the years that the London scene has very much gone into the heels side of pole. I don't know if you would have noticed that as much, but I've noticed that the names that I all know from London tend to be names that all do heels. Why do you think that is? What do you think's going? What are the Londoners doing? Why are they getting filthy in London? Is there something in the water there? What's going on?
I think, to be honest, I don't even think that's just a London thing. I think it was probably started in London, but it's like gradually kind of spread out everywhere. It's now a case of, I don't know anyone who doesn't do heels, or at least dabble in heels, which I find quite nice, because you went from such a heavily focused, like tricks heavy, everyone trying to do a fongy, everyone trying to do the works and be bendy and stuff, and now everyone's kind of not necessarily straying from it, but just trying to make it more flowy with heels, kind of.
I just have this theory that I think the reason that is because a lot of people have realised that actually they started pole dancing for the dancing, and now they're like, actually, the dancing bit is really fun. I'm going to go back to that bit, because that's kind of why I started. Like, I didn't start pole dancing to do fungi. Do you know what I mean? I didn't, if I'm being honest. I didn't start pole dancing to do fungi. I do like tricks. Obviously, it's what I'm mainly known for. But, yeah, I don't. Why do you think we're having this transition all of a sudden where everyone owns a pair of pleasers now? I remember a time where hardly anyone owned pleasers.
I know. I remember I bought my first pair of pleasers, I think, 2015. So this is showing my age. when it
I look at that, that video I sent you of you, me, and then a load of other students years ago. Oh, God, it makes me feel sick. I'm wearing like sandals, and sandals do not look good on me anyway. And I'm like, I've got my fucking man feet. My toes look like they're about to jump off a fucking cliff. I'm like, oh, this is disgusting. And I'm literally watching us, and we're both like on the flats of our feet. We're not using any point work at all. Like, oh God.
This is how you know we were at the cutting edge of something special, without any kind of ankle engagement whatsoever.
Oh my God, no way. Like, seriously. I mean, I struggle to engage my ankles now, and I've been doing it for ages, and I find it like such a hard technique to grasp. Really, I do. And actually so much harder in sandals. What do you prefer to dance in, sandals or boots?
I think I go between the two. So if I want to do more kind of tricks and more like kind of thread throughs, then I prefer a boot. But if I'm doing like floppy ankles or really kind of glide work, then I'm definitely more of a sandals type gal.
Yeah, I mean, like kips and stuff, like doing them in sandals. Oh, I mean, just like, that sucks, doesn't it? Do you, if you had to choose one, which one would you choose?
Oh, I think I'd choose sandals, simply for the fact that I know my ankle engagement will forever be there.
Yeah.
Because it's hard. Once you lose it, it's so hard to get back. I went sandals almost the entire year last year, and then I kind of slipped off for a month, went back to boots, came back like a month later, ankle engagement was gone. It was out. It was out.
Well, you've got the ankle engagement supporter, I think. I think for people who have the ankle engagement supporter, it's kind of like fine, because but did it take you long to get the ankle engagement? Because I found for me, like, even in boots, like, and boots obviously protect your ankles a lot. I have to say, like, my best fails I get on polos, though, they're always in sandals. Sandals always provide the goods for the heels fails, I have to say. But yeah, I mean, what about you? Like, how long did it take you to build that kind of ankle conditioning up?
I think it just depends on how often you do it. So, like, I tend to do it as part of my warm up. So, anytime I'm in heels, do my ankle conditioning, make sure they're nice and warm before I even touch a pole. Sometimes I won't even bother with, like, my general shoulders and stuff. I know this is bad coming from an instructor, but when I train for myself and I don't have time, it's the truth. We don't have time.
Let's not lie.
But when I do, it's pretty much all ankles, making sure they're as warm as they can be, because I want to be pretty much on point whenever I can. So yeah, if I'm doing heels, ankles are a must, and wrists.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure. And you made a transition. I mean, I wrote this in the in our chat as a joke. I put, "Oh, you went from trickery to sluttery," but you did kind of. There was a time back in the day where you were very much a trickster, and I feel like I've seen this in a lot of people. I mean, I hope she doesn't mind me saying this, but like people like Emma Coffey, I remember, used to do quite a lot of tricks, actually. She used to do a lot of the same competitions as me. Kirsty Griffith, same thing. And they've transitioned very much into the heels world. Well, why do you think that is? And like, what was the reason for you?
I think it's not necessarily that. For me, I don't think it was anything to do with having tricks as a thing. I just had a core set of tricks that I liked and then kind of evolved them from where they are. So, like, everyone knows, who knows me or follows me, I love a shoulder mount. Like, I could do it in my sleep if I wanted to.
Do you?
Maybe.
When I knew you were coming to my class, I was like, right, we'll have to do a shoulder mount trick today, because otherwise she'll leave feeling really pissed off.
I can't do the rest of it. Just give me a shoulder mount, I'll be fine.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's just, I find that having, even though I feel like I do the same 5 tricks, I want to elevate the same 5 tricks. So the next time you may see me do a shoulder mount, you might see me doing a different entry, different exit, doing a variation, or doing just something to make it feel a bit more me. And I think that one thing that helped me was hips. I found out that I have kind of very mobile hips, which I didn't actually realize. So I worked that to my advantage with undulations and like isolations of like my body, and I already have we'll call it a bendy back without kind of trying so hard. But yeah, kind of just work things to your advantage, and I think that can only happen when you're, say, maybe 4 years plus in pole. You kind of trial things out, see what works. If it doesn't work, thing it to the side. If it does work, elevate it to be your own, and then that's how you get through.
Yeah, for sure. And I think that you mentioned about, obviously, you have those core tricks that are like your go-to tricks. What's your advice actually for students who might be listening to that and think, oh, actually, she's kind of right. I never really perfect a trick. I kind of just get a video of it and then I move on to the next trick. I mean, do you advise that to your students to be like, listen, don't rush, like try and stick on a trick and make it look good before you just move on to the next best thing?
See, this is always hard. I will always say, get the basics right. So it doesn't necessarily matter if it's like a butterfly or anything like that. Is your, like, if you don't want to invert, then is your drop down into a outside leg hang like as clean as you can make it? If is your spins like as clean as you can make it, then that's kind of like the way forward. I don't tend to alter people's mindsets too much, simply because it's how they want to be, and I want them to have like the best experience kind of possible. And everyone who takes my class knows that I'm a bloody idiot, and I'm just sat there, just raving out to my music whilst they're all doing the stuff, making sure obviously no one gets hurt. If they're doing something spin wise, I can just roll around and be like, yeah, go, be fun. So yeah. Also, you actually have to tell me if I go on a rant, because I tell novels, not books.
No, don't worry. Like, speak as much as you want. It's a podcast. We're here to speak. Speak as much as you want. How we talk about like perfecting moves and the time that comes with doing things like that. And time is such a precious thing when it comes to training pole, because there's so many elements to it. But you have a full-time job as well. Tell us about that.
Yeah, I am an administrator from Monday to Friday, and I teach once a week. So for me,
and then you have to train on top of that as well.
So
how do you manage that?
Yeah, last year I didn't. Not gonna lie to anyone, it was a lot of work. So normally, pretty much most of last year was Monday 9 to 5, Monday to Friday 9 to 5, Tuesday teach, Saturday Sunday either I'm teaching or I'm judging somewhere. That was pretty much most of 2022. And not gonna lie, I burnt myself out pretty hard. To the point now.
What did that look like? What happened there?
It was just like you were running on empty. So even though like I had my 9 to 5 and like I'm just sat in front of a computer, but my day job is actually pretty stressful because I have a lot of work that comes my way, and then I have to deal with it. I have to deal with clients, etc., etc. And then to have to use my body to, even though my body's okay, but my mind is just like, okay, I'm tired. Like, I want to sleep. Whereas I think to myself, okay, it's Tuesday, it's 5 o'clock. I need to get out the flat to go and teach. And then it comes to Friday when you're just like, oh, I want to relax after a long week. And you're thinking to yourself, crap, I got to be in Liverpool for this. I got to be in Hereford next week for this. And it is a lot, and I don't think a lot of professionals now. I think the only 2 people I know who do full-time jobs as well as teach is Lauren King and Jessica D-Bank, because I spoke to her about this as well, because she still has, I talked to her, I said, do you have a mogul job? And she was just like, yeah. And I was just like, how are you doing this? Because she's more places than I am. So I'm like, how are you coping? And she was just like, yeah. We move.
I find it funny as well how people don't really realise that you've got a full-time job. You teach, you train, you sometimes enter competitions. You've also, let's just mention that you've got a partner as well who does actually like to see you at some point.
He didn't see me last year.
These are so many. That's what I mean. And it's like, it's that whole thing of like, how are we expecting people to be so great when we've also got to make a living, we've also got to, and especially as well the professional polers, like, who don't have full-time jobs. People are like, oh, you're always working. So, well, yeah, I've got to pay my bills, but I've also got to try and work as well. Like, I've got to compete and do all these other crazy things. It is really unmanageable, I think, and for many people they struggle with it. I mean, what are you looking to do in 2023 that's going to try and relieve that? Have you made any changes to try and get it a little bit better?
Well, this year I've actually kind of decided to take a step back from outside studio work, so to speak. So like, not really promoting myself as much for workshops. So I'll be doing less workshops. I might even go back to competing. Who knows? It's mainly just focused on me and my babies, and making sure that I'm there for them, and making sure I have like actual lesson plans. They were actually very shocked this month to find out I have planned the whole of January. So that's saying something.
What are your views on the whole competing thing now at this point, like in your pole kind of career? Like, I just feel, I talk to so many people about this. Sorry, for anyone listening to this podcast, they're probably gonna be like, oh my God, this is like fucking broken record. But I just feel like it's really important because it's different for different people. And I like to try and work out who's at what stage and who wants to compete, who doesn't. I definitely feel like I'm at a point where I don't really want to compete as much anymore. And I never say never, but I did say I was going to retire. But if I thought of something that I really wanted to do, I would do it. And I will this year once. But what's your views on it?
I think competing's great if you're looking for that extra push. If you want that push to kind of feel like you want to accomplish something or perform or just do something like out of your comfort zone, I think that's the great area for you to go on. For me personally, I like judging more than I do competing, simply because I have major anxiety if anybody's seen me before a comp. It's not fun. It's never fun. But I urge everyone to do it, because I always say it's 4 minutes or 3.5 minutes of your life in the grand scheme of how many minutes in a day. If you do it, you do it. If you don't, you don't. But I'd like to go back to competing, because I was speaking with Jacob about this the last time I saw him, and he said that he'd only go back to competing if he had like a very big idea. And I am wholeheartedly in that, because anyone who knows me, I love to just perform and just have a theme and have the whole aspect just come together and just kind of wow people. So that's kind of the only reason why I think, myself included now, would ever go back to competing. So if I have a good enough idea for something, then I'll be like, okay, we'll put this forward, see whether or not people like it, see what the feedback is, and we go from there.
So while we're on the subject of competitions, I'm going to bring up the subject that actually was one of the things that you wanted to talk about, which was competing as a black person. And I've just realised we haven't mentioned anything about race at the beginning of this. So if you're not watching, Shan is black, just in case you need to know. Hey!
Hey!
But so, I was really intrigued when you said that, because I was like, okay. Obviously, not being a black person, I can't speak to what it is you're going to say. So I was really intrigued to be like, okay, I wonder what Shan's going to say. So I'm ready and listening. What are your views on competing as a black person?
So when I'm going to use my little imaginary walking stick here, back in my day, there was very limited people, or you saw the same people working the same amount of comps every other comp, every other year. So one thing I will say is that representation does matter, because I've had a few people coming after Pole Theatre. This was 2017, and they said, I'm now entering my first comp because I saw you on stage. And you kind of don't think about it that way, because I went into competing because I'm an Aries. I like to win. Like that, it's very, very much a me type of thing back in the day when my bones didn't feel like they're 72. So yeah, it was just nice to see. I kind of see like the next kind of generation after me, after Lauren, after Alicia, after Serena, after, these are just the UK polers that I can name off the top of my head, who can come after us and make it big and make it known. So it's always nice, especially when I'm judging, to see like another black person that I've not necessarily heard of or seen before, because it's not as if we're not there. Like I have a load of black people who go to the studio that I'm at. It's not like we're not there. It's just more of a case of either we don't compete or we see a whole kind of all white lineup and you're like, oh, you know what? I don't want to be known as like the token black person. So,
what's your thoughts on, the whole discussion around where it depends on sort of like, because I've talked about this before, I can't remember who with, about it depends where you live. Obviously, there's a larger black population in London. And actually, I've noticed that there's a really big population of black pole dancers in the US, because there's quite a large population of black people there too. Obviously, that's a generalization. There's areas which do have a larger sort of communities of black pollers there, very much like LA. I'm thinking New York as well, actually. Obviously the South, maybe not so much. But yeah, I know for the UK, the more north you go, the whiter it gets. Have you ever noticed that? Like,
I mean, once you hit Manchester's all right. I lived in Manchester for a year.
Yeah.
So it's not bad.
Yeah, I think like Manchester again though is very metropolitan. Do you think? Like, do you think it's because it's a university town as well? Like, because these are where the big unis are. So if anyone's going to come from like far away, they're going to come to maybe London, maybe Manchester, maybe Brighton, maybe Leeds. Do you know what I mean? I mean, I don't know what the black community is like in Leeds. I mean, do you know? Is there much of a big black pole community there?
Not gonna lie, I've never been to Leeds, so I have no idea.
Yeah, I've been a couple times just to teach, but I've never been. I've been to. I hear the jokes about it, so I've heard it's not like amazing or anything. I remember asking Jacob and being like, "Why did you move to Leeds? What a random place to move to."
Yeah, it is. Of all the places you could have gone to, you go to Leeds. Like, I would have thought, like, sorry
if you were going from Poland, right? If you're going to move from somewhere, it's not the first place. I don't know, it'd be like me moving to the US and just moving to like a small place in like Phoenix, Arizona or something. Do you know what I mean? Like somewhere random rather than New York, LA, Chicago, somewhere where everyone knows. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Just But I want to know, do you think pole competitions, let's talk specifically about UK pole competitions, do you think they're doing enough to get, you know, black pole dancers a space in the lineups? Oh, I put you on the spot there, bitch.
I was not expecting that. I was like, okay, I see. But
you can say no. Like, it's not targeting anyone directly. I think it's worth saying no if you don't agree. Like, or some are, some aren't. What do you think? Be honest.
I think I think you're right. Some are and some aren't. But like, most of the comps that I've judged at, sorry, are all. I've all basically asked them, can I be on the judging panel? Whether or not the lineup was going to be as diverse with me there, I can't give an answer to that. But then again, it's so hard because I always say that there's the most amount of people in pole. Wait, hold on. Let me stop because I'm actually going on a tangent. Let me organize. Sorry. There's like the OG kind of black polers that I know who I competed against or I saw as a competitor or whatever they were at the time. But then you have like the new schoolers who are coming through, like Rachel Giselle and Jessica Debank and other people who are coming up the ranks. And I think that they should also get their spot in like the limelight too, because I think if you look hard enough, even through Instagram, even if with the algorithms and all the stuff, people share a lot of things. Like, there's no reason why they shouldn't be put on a stage. There's absolutely no reason why. I will wholeheartedly say when I watched Rachel Giselle on stage for X-Gen, a slight tear came down my eye. And that's saying something someone who's very dark and very cold inside.
Does Rachel Giselle have really short hair?
Yeah, she's basically like Amber Rose.
I think I met her, but I didn't see her routine because I was on the stool outside. But like, yeah, that's good to hear.
She's incredible. But this is the kind of thing that I mean is just that the talent is there. Like, you kind of don't want to have to force feed it in someone's face. You just have to know that whoever's being shared, whoever's being followed, whoever's being liked, even though like Instagram doesn't count for a lot in my eyes anymore, you could have like 16,000 followers and like your movement may just not appeal to me. But if someone's got like lesser followers, I find that their movement's just a bit more quality control and all the good stuff.
When I think of like the big names in the UK, I agree with you. There's not many black names on the lineup, and why do you think that is? Do you genuinely think, and I'm just intrigued to know, because I want to know what you as a black poler believe, but do you think that it is that the pole community was or still is racist and that they were pushing people away, or do you think it is just that over time more black people have been included because the community has grown? Do you know what I mean? Like, I don't know what the population of black people within the UK is, so I can't really speak to it, but I know in Hemel, as you know, majority of my students, I think I've got maybe 5 students who are black, and then I've got some that are of mixed origin. But yeah, it's one of those things. I've talked to you about this before. I think actually when I first ever did some advertising, I think I might have even asked you if I could have used one of your pictures, because I wanted to be inclusive. I wanted a picture of a man on there. I wanted someone of a different body shape and everyone of different sort of origins to be on there, so that it did look inclusive. And then obviously the more people I had coming, the more I could use it. I mean, what's your view on that? Do you think that the pole community, like back in the day, like I'm talking before we were even, polling, do you think they were being racist and keeping people out?
I wouldn't say necessarily keeping people out, but they weren't doing anything. So it would always be...
They weren't doing anything to encourage them in, you mean?
Yeah. As in just, it was very much like you look on Facebook at the time, you see what was around, and you go to a class, and 9 times out of 10... I was lucky enough to be a bit fortunate that my classes with Andrea, that was a bit more mixed than, say, other classes around the place. So yeah, I was very fortunate for that, but I know that not everyone was. But it just depends on regions, more specifically at the time, regions, because as people grow up, you tend to move out to the countryside to live out your best retirement life, etc. Whereas in the cities, you have a bigger diverse of just multicultural in general. When you have come to South London, you rarely see white people, I personally find, especially like round where I live. But then you also have places in London that are white. You have Jewish people who live in North London. You have Asians who live in maybe East or West. But it's just a mixture of everyone. And I just don't think the pole community, unfortunately, when I started, wasn't a big thing. And I don't think it was not necessarily racist. It was just wasn't inclusive prior to when George Floyd died, and the whole Black Lives Matter movement kind of went and jumped off. And I don't think anyone batted an eyelid prior to that. Whereas afterwards, everyone kind of paid a bit more attention to what they were actually advertising, what they were actually doing. And I mean, it's made a bit of a difference. It's a bit more kind of not necessarily encouraging, but it is a bit more colourful. We'll say that.
Yeah, it definitely is. I think especially not even just around race, around gender and around, we've got a lot more trans polers now than we ever have. And it is great. I think it's a really difficult one, because I speak as a studio owner who, when I first started, I literally had to advertise with pictures of myself because I didn't have any students. And then when I did have students, especially being in Hempstead, it was all white people. So then I was advertising with pictures of white people because that's what I had. It's the only students I had. I couldn't just, can you imagine if I just took a picture of a random black pole dancer I'd never known before and used their photo? I couldn't do anything like that, and I would never. So I feel like, what's your advice for someone like me back then? I mean, I know now really what I did, but what is your advice? Let's say, for example, someone's listening to this and they're like, yeah, actually, I'd love to get more, people from different ethnic backgrounds into the studio. Like, what's the best way to do it without being like, hey, come to my studio if you're black? Do you know what I mean? Like, how do you do it? Or like, and I'm not even just talking about race now. I'm talking about, people of different genders, sexualities, how do we include other people?
If I'm being honest, I don't have the answer for that. It's
It's so hard,
I
isn't
just
it?
have to think about it from like a race, or even for me, like a body. I wouldn't say that I'm plus size or I'm fat in it or in any way, shape, or form, but I do feel like I'm thick with 6 C's, which means I've just got big old bum and big old thighs. So I would never say that I'm, a size 2. So I always think that you, it's more about being approachable, because anyone can try something once. And once you get there, and if you feel like comfortable and surrounded by people who are like, yeah, you can do it, you can do this, you can do that, then that's a good enough reason at least to come to another class and see how the next class goes, next class goes, next class goes. So I always say that first impressions matter,
Yeah,
especially
for
because
sure.
I always think that I've got my beginners class on a 4-week beginners class, and their first perception of pole is with me. So if
Yeah.
I'm not, say, not necessarily comfortable around myself, but if I feel any kind of way, shape, or form like a bit insecure, they will pick up on that and they'll be like, oh, maybe we won't come back, or maybe we won't do this, or maybe we won't do that. And I think you just have to be very aware of that as a studio owner. So when I see all of this stuff on like polos and these questions that these instructors or studio owners ask, or what's been brought up, I'm just like, how do you continue to have people come to your
A
studio?
business. Do you know, and this is the thing, like, and people are like, why are you sharing this? But that's why I share it, because I think it's so important, because people need to learn, and if they don't ask, they won't learn. And it's sad, actually. And we're talking about competitions, actually, and this is the Tuesday topic I got sent, and I didn't share it purely because every time I've ever shared anything about race on polos, it's never turned out very well for me. So I've just decided that I'm not going to do it anymore. But someone actually sent me a Tuesday topic saying that they'd entered a showcase, not like a competition, but it was just for people in that area to perform, not a studio showcase, kind of like a competition without the competing part. And they basically said that they'd done it the year before, and they said they were dark skinned, which they said that because the lighting was so dark that they barely showed up. And they were like, so they'd asked that if the next year they could put some more lights. And they were like, well, the lighting is the lighting. And they were like, I don't feel like that's good enough. And I was like, well, I kind of agree. But then I also think if someone said to me, like, at the venue that I use, I'd be a bit like, God, I don't know how do we fix that? Because, yeah, we've only got so many lights, but there's always a way around, isn't there? You can always get fucking more lights. Get some front lights on the front of the stage and just hire them. It wouldn't cost you much. It probably cost you like 50, 60 pounds. Do you know what I mean? Or like, I just feel like, yeah, that really shocked me, but it was one of those things, again, where I think really people should know the answer to that one anyway. Do you know what I mean? But it makes me sad that studio owners that are still out there that don't think about that. And I think this is why sometimes I find it really hard to understand how anyone could feel not included, because as someone who, is a man in a very female dominated industry, gay, I've got a Jewish family, talking about like being minority. I've always been very supportive and inclusive of anyone who walks through the door, because I know that when I first started doing pole, people did not want me to compete. Like, one of the rules back then was that you had to wear shoes. And because obviously I didn't wear heels, they were like, yeah, sorry, you have to wear shoes. So I wore shoes. I wore plimsolls. I wore like trainers instead. And, but I definitely felt excluded. I definitely felt like they did not want me to do it. So I felt it a bit myself. But as a studio owner, I've never understood how any business would turn money away purely based on the way someone looks or what religion they are, any of that stuff. I just like, really? I find that so odd, don't you?
I mean, I don't necessarily find it odd. I just think it's how the UK are in terms of their sketchiness, is that I find that the US are very open in racism. Like, if someone doesn't like you because of your race, it's likely you will know. Whereas,
do you think that in the US?
I think not necessarily in
I feel like it's worse here.
You think it's worse here? Actually, no, probably no.
Really?
Actually, no, I do agree with you there, because you have like if I ever actually, I went to one studio in the 30 years I've been going to New York, and I felt so. Even though there were mostly black people there, it was just such a nice vibe. There was white people and mixed people, and it was all great. It was all dandy.
What studio was it?
Oh crap, I don't remember. Oh, it was like a few years ago. It was before COVID. I don't remember. It was when who taught me? Bentley taught me.
Bentley. Oh, I love him.
Yeah.
But I see, because I followed. Do you remember when Jazz the Polar came to the UK and you brought her to my studio?
Of course I do. I miss
So, like, and I follow Jazz, and I see like at the studio she's at. There's a lot of black polars there. It looks amazing, and obviously you've got Ashley Fox's studio there. She takes a lot of black people at her studio, and we just don't have that here. So that's why I was a bit like, oh, really? I feel like it's so much more racist here because, and you know, and I can admit that there was time years ago. You remember Little Britain? Like, you could never watch that now, but that was so normalized here.
That was so normalized here. Nobody actually, I kind of like almost think to myself, how did nobody call this out? Nobody said anything. This was on the news. This was on major TV networks, and this was okay. And I'm just thinking, okay. Oh.
And that's what I mean. I feel like that's why when you said I feel like America's worse, I feel like sometimes the UK's worse because we had a period back then when I was younger, when I was really being primed into probably the prime age, I guess, where you would make someone racist or not racist, right? So like someone to be influenced. Some of the younger people watching Little Britain. Oh my God, like I didn't even know I didn't know any different because I used to watch Catherine Tate, I used to watch Little Britain. Some of the things now I look back at, I'm like, how did we watch that? Did you ever see that? Did you ever watch it?
I did. I watched Catherine Tate when I was younger. But the only thing I kind of say that America's worse in terms of violence. The UK, I don't think we get as violent in terms of racism. I don't think, because I think it's more to do with like guns and like, was it the First Amendment or Second Amendment, and just that aspect. And then you have also that you don't get taught you only get taught Black History Month 1 month out of the year in the UK, and that is that. And then it's like it's curtains closed after 31st of October. You don't hear anything about Black History Month after that. So you're kind of in the UK. I find that you're very deprived of knowledge, especially when you're going up through maybe year 6 to year 13 or year 11, really. And then you have to find the information for yourself. And if you're not into it, then you don't find it, which is why then you have a lot of, say, white populated places where they don't understand like Black culture or Asian culture, or when someone who's Black comes into their town, just like, who the fuck are you? And all this stuff and whatever, is because 9 times out of 10 they probably don't have the knowledge that's there. But then I always say to myself, after the age of maybe 21, actually really at a cap 18, you've got your own mind to go out there into the world where there's the internet, for fuck's sake, to go and find the knowledge.
Yeah, it's there. You've just got to be willing to find it. But the problem is that you've got to, I've always said, I think with anything like homophobia, racism, all of these sorts of things, I think it's got to be taught to you, and it's always taught to you by your peers. It's either taught to you by your brother, your mum, your dad. It's taught to you from a young age. It's not something that someone just grows up and thinks they're going to be one day. It doesn't work like that. And I think because I was brought up around my stepmom, who's from Jamaica, I just got used to it from a very young age. So maybe for me it was different. I don't know, but it's weird, isn't it? That was so funny because when you said about, I think America's worse, and then I realised what you mean. But I guess I can't really speak to the US because I don't really know because I don't live there. But yeah, I see what you mean about the violence being different there. But yeah, God, we've kind of really gone off on a tangent on that one.
This is the problem, Dan. This is my life.
But it's important though. But this is the thing. I feel like there's so many facets to it, so many sides to it. There was actually another thing. Oh, sorry, guys. I actually just need to quickly take this. I hope that's okay. It's Sarah Scott trying to call me. Hello, Sarah. Hey, yeah, I'm just doing a podcast at the moment. Is everything okay? What's up? Oh, you just wanted to tell me about your pole camp in March. Oh, yeah, tell me about it. Who's teaching? Marlo Fiskin, Ali Kamikaze, and Kiana Walker. Wow, that sounds amazing. Are you teaching as well? Oh, wow, this sounds so cool. What's the hotel called? Oh, the Meter Grand Resort. Wow, that's going to be amazing. Are there spaces? There are spaces. Oh my God, I'm going to have to let people know. Well, you definitely have to count me in. I'll go and tell everyone about it now. No worries, babes. I've got you. All right, bye. Guys, news just in. There's spaces on the Thailand camp. Sarah Scott's off the pole camp. Go and check it out. Go and check out OTP Retreats and go to her next pole camp in March. See you there. Yeah, so, right, that was it. We were talking about what it was like to be black competitions. And then I'm sure there was something about, that was it. Right, okay. Whilst we're talking about race, let's get straight into it. Because this is why I wanted to talk to you, because I knew I couldn't, because we're friends and because I've known you for years, I knew I could talk quite comfortably to you about it, and I was intrigued to know your opinions on it. But obviously I would never intrude on anyone who I don't know well enough to be like, hey, can I talk to you about this? But I really wanted to know, because I've seen it a few times now. I've never, I have hosted these classes before with you, my resident twerk queen, of course. But so twerk classes at studios, this has been a thing that I've seen come up. If you, I see that face, Shan's like, oh shit, here we go.
I might get cancelled.
I'm intrigued to learn. I've been lucky because I think, again, it's something that I just knew. I guess the thought of asking someone of a white origin to teach something that is definitely not from a white background at all, it just seems like very common knowledge to me. But I think, you know, I didn't realise that actually it wasn't. And even still to this day, there are studios that teach twerk and are taught by white people, and no one learns the history of twerk, where it came from. So no one really understands what they're doing or where it came from. What is your view? What is your view on that first? So what is your view on studios teaching twerk? What do you think the advice should be?
I think the advice should be, this is solely my opinion. I have zero problem with a white person teaching twerk, sorry. However, there are stimulations attached to that. So you have basic things like qualifications for twerk. I got mine, even though I've been twerking since the womb, I still got a qualification for, it's more to do with knowing what body movements to warm up, what to do in terms of your hip tilts, and making sure it doesn't go too far into your upper back, and making sure that, like, these are health and safety things that you need to know about that you can't necessarily learn off of a YouTube video or attending one twerk class. So that's aspect number one. Number two, if you can, like, immerse yourself in the culture. So prime example, I will forever big up this girl, is Patricia the Tease.
I was going to mention Patricia, actually. I didn't know whether I should, because I didn't want to throw her in it, but I didn't know whether maybe she'd received any backlash for being white and teaching.
To be honest, there's very few people that I see in my life that could have been black in another lifetime. She is one of them. She is definitely one of them. Because if anybody's seen Patricia's stories, like, she was flying the flag at Notting Hill Carnival. Like, things like that matter in a kind of industry, well, not necessarily industry, but in a style of dance that is predominantly black or predominantly Asian, because you do have Asian influences, you have Polynesian influences, you have African influences. It's not just, okay, I'm just going to do this up in the club and that's it. There's so many, like, twerk is, I always see it as an umbrella. You have different aspects.
Yeah, well, I think as well, people forget that, like you just said, about people just in the club shaking a bit. But that isn't, that's the difference, is that what they're doing is just having a good time and shaking their butt a bit in the club. That's not twerking, is it? So I think when people say, oh, I'm going to go and twerk in the club, it's a bit like, well, it's not really twerking. You're just shaking your butt a little bit. It's different. Like, people are then advertising, people are then learning that. They're learning how to shake their butt. And then like, oh, I'll teach twerk class because I can shake my butt. Do you find that? Like, it seems a bit weird.
I think it's just, I personally get like very offended when I see, for example, pole studios, just using one of their own instructors to just teach a twerk class, rather than actually having the knowledge that you need behind it in order to teach a twerk class. Even though I'm Black, I still feel like I've got a lot to learn within twerk. Like, there's countless other people that I know who have qualifications, but still they're still Black. It's not a be all of the end all. Just because I'm Black, you have to hire me. No, you have to have the knowledge behind it.
Yeah, I've seen, I won't mention names, but I had seen a few studios that have been, I don't know, cancelled, is that the word? Like, attacked. They're being attacked. Whenever I say that, I always think of LaContra's trying to go, I feel very attacked. But like, studios having people really going at them because they've done exactly what you just said. They've gone, oh, Lisa can shake her butt, you should teach a twerk class. Do you know what I mean? And they've gone, oh, we're going to do a twerk shop. And I've seen them get attacked saying that they should be, you know, employing people who are, you know, Black twerk artists, people who have been doing this and know what they're doing. So it was really intriguing when you said about they don't need to be Black. So you just think that, personally for you, you feel that they don't necessarily have to be Black. They just need to be aware and educated on the origins of where it come from.
Yeah, I think it's more than just being immersed in the culture. Like, you have someone that, like Patricia, who is forever going to Afrobeats brunch, and just really she's in the culture. Like, I always say that, have you ever heard of White Yardie?
No.
There's a white Jamaican man, and he speaks patois. So that's, for those of you who don't know, is Jamaican, broken Jamaican English, essentially. And it's just, he always says he's not Jamaican, but he's immersed in the culture because he's been there more times than I have. I've been to Jamaica once. I'm more English than a lot of people realize. I don't actually go to Jamaica that much. So yeah, you just have to be. Sorry, I've really forgotten what I was saying. See, this is why you have to keep me on.
It's okay. No, we were just talking about like why people don't. You were saying about like they don't need to necessarily be Black. They just need to be immersed in the culture.
Yeah, I just think it's a lot more important for people to be around the culture, understand the culture, because I think it's also to bring up a point that with strippers, for example, strippers are, a lot of them will say that obviously strippers are the reason why we do what we do, which is 100% correct. But when you hear that someone's put together a stripper workshop who hasn't been a stripper, who has not learned from a stripper or has not been an ex-stripper previously, would you learn from them knowing that they're not a stripper? That is the kind of questions I ask myself when I hear about a twerk instructor. Is that, can they twerk? Are they immersed in the culture of twerk? Do they have their qualifications for twerk? And that goes the same for pole instructors too. If you found out that someone didn't have a qualification but yet was teaching pole, would you go there? Probably not, because it's unsafe.
It's funny actually, because back in the day we did, because no one had qualifications. So I probably would, but only because, I mean, it's like me. I actually, it's funny, we talk about, I'm intrigued to know your opinion on this, kind of going off the subject maybe of twerk, but more on qualifications. You know, what do you think qualifications really mean in the grand scheme of things? Like, what you do, would you say that if someone did a qualification, they'd be able to do what you do? Because I don't think they could.
This is so
You see what I mean? I know. I'm sorry. I'm making your life really hard here, but sorry. I find it, and there's no right or wrong answer. This is the thing. I find it such an interesting topic because back in the day, you know, people like Sally Ann Giles, Deb Riley, there wasn't qualifications back then. So when I first started doing it, I learned with Stacey. This was back before Stacey even ran Expert. Expert didn't even exist at that point. I think Expol had only been going for a short period of time. And you know, qualifications weren't really a massive thing back then. And then I did mine. And if I'm honest, I'm more of a practical learner. I hate the theory side of things. So I hate qualifications. I've just never been into it. But yeah, I mean, what's your views on the whole qualification thing? Like, how essential do you think they are to telling whether someone's a good teacher or not?
No, okay, that's probably the wrong way for me to put it. The way you said it just at the end, I was like, it doesn't necessarily make them any better or any worse.
No.
But I do think it's there for, like insurance purposes. That's kind of the back thingy, whatever.
But hold on, but just to be clear, by the way, I'm not trying to go back, because I think what you were trying to say to me was, you know, if someone does a course for twerk, at least they're being able to show that they're trying to put the effort in to learn the history, to do these things. Yeah. This is if it was a white person teaching, right? That hadn't had any previous background. They realized they really love this culture of twerk, and they love the dance style. They really enjoy doing it. And it just goes to show they're going out of the way. Sorry, what I meant was more for pole dancing, actually. I was just intrigued to know, because twerk, I think, probably a bit different subject, but more for pole. Like, what do you feel the benefits were to you for doing your qualification? Because I didn't feel like I changed very much. Like, I felt like it maybe taught me a few teaching, like spotting techniques, but it didn't. Yeah, I don't know. I feel like I learned more from watching how other people taught. I felt like that taught me more.
I think for me, I prefer having something as a qualification just for my own personal peace of mind. I know that there's a lot of people that will do, like, who will shadow for like 6 months before they go ahead and get a qualification of their own. But I think in the grand scheme of things, you can't just take out an insurance for sport without having some kind of qualification, I think, to back it up. Agreed. Because you can't just say, oh yeah, I'm going to teach pole, and then have no sort of insurance if someone falls and hurts themselves really badly, and then they come back and sue you. Lucky enough, we don't live in a place where, oh, I'm going to sue you type of scenario. But it's just to essentially just cover our backs and make sure that, well, my students are in the best possible, like, warmed up, cooled down. Like, I was not very great in school, especially with biology and the body and stuff like that. So having things like that helped me out a lot, because I actually understand, like, how my body works a lot more through my qualifications, rather than it just be, okay, I'm just going to learn on the fly, which is fine for other people, and that's maybe what works for them. But for me, it worked out that I prefer it.
Yeah, I feel I've noticed that more so nowadays than ever, there's more people who do pole, and then maybe they're a PT and they're like, oh, I'm gonna go and do a pole course actually so I can teach pole. It's so different, isn't it? You just can't do that. It's not like, you know, like with the Les Mills programs where you can just go and learn body pump, and you'd be like, oh, I'm gonna learn body pump, what did you say? Body pump, and I'm just going to teach body pump next month. So body pump class is coming soon. It's so different because you're learning an art. It's such a there's so much more to it. It's like all of a sudden me being like, oh, I'm going to go and do a gymnastics course to be a coach, and I'll be a gymnastic. I don't know anything about gymnastics really. Do you know what I mean? I know how to do a fucking cartwheel, and I can barely do that some days. Do you know what I mean? So, yeah, I've always found the qualification thing really interesting because, yeah, I have it. And for anyone listening, by the way, it's actually really important that you know that if you do ever want to be an instructor, you do have to do your courses, because if you don't and someone does decide to sue you, even though that's not much of a thing here, if someone did hurt themselves and tried to sue you and you didn't have any qualifications, oh, you would not be insured at all. There's just no way. If you've got nothing at all, there's just no way you'd be insured. So definitely go and get your insurance, everyone. And one thing I'm actually going to ask you, because I tried asking Stevie and Athena about this, but they literally had zero opinions on it. So actually, I'd love to ask someone who is a black woman living in the UK what your opinion on it is. What's your opinion on the Harry and Meghan thing? I love them. I'm fully supportive of them.
I was. This is what, funny enough, me and my boyfriend were talking about this yesterday, and we were pretty much in agreement about this. So Meghan Markle.
Just to mention quickly, your boyfriend's white, isn't he? My boyfriend
is white. He's sick of the both of them. He doesn't like the two of them. Me, I just don't like this Meghan, she's crying wolf scenario, because she used the fact that she is very light skinned for her to get jobs, and she claimed that she was white, and then all of a sudden she comes over here and then she's claiming that everyone's racist. So I'm a bit like, kind of make it make sense kind of scenario where you're using the fact that you're very, very light skinned to your advantage, but the moment that someone actually brings up that you're black is now the problem. So, like, for me, I find it very hard to get by when, like, it's been very much a hypocrite. So
yeah, that's really interesting. So, and tell me, like, do you what do you think, like, other people of colour think of the Harry and Meghan situation? Because actually, I was a bit shocked by that, because I thought you were going to be like, oh, I'm in full support of her, but and I know you're not saying you're not, by the way, but yeah, I was just intrigued to hear a different perspective of it. I also think that we, on social media and TV, we hear so many different bits and snippets, and it's all been taken out of proportion. Have you watched the documentary about it on Netflix by any chance?
Funny enough, I have not. So yeah,
I recommend it for sure. It was an eye-opener.
Oh, was it? Oh,
yeah, it was. I again, I don't know that I can really say how. Like, I do support them, of course. I love Harry. I've always loved Harry anyway. I knew he was going to be the rebel of the two. I think even from a young age, people knew he was going to be the rebel of them both. And I really like that. I really like her. I mean, but it sounds so stupid, but I really like her because I thought she was so great in Suits. And when I saw that they were dating, I was like, oh my God, that's amazing. I loved her in Suits. So obviously I don't know her. I know the girl from Suits. That's who I know.
Right.
But yeah, I mean, I'm in full support. I think they've probably been through a hell of a lot more than they're able to say. I bet there's so much stuff they're not able to say. And I think, you know, they just want to fucking live their lives. Leave them the fuck alone. And actually, when you watch that documentary, it really opens your eyes to what they actually have been put through. And yes, no, I do understand what you're saying. I didn't even think about that. And I guess maybe if I were black, I probably would be a bit like, why are you using this all of a sudden as, do you know what I mean?
Yeah,
like,
it's
it
just
worked to your advantage enough.
Yeah, you're just like, oh, okay. But then I also hear through my good old friend TikTok that
it's probably on everything now.
It does. You have TikTok that says that apparently, who is it now? Harry was basically boasting that he killed all these people when he was serving in the army. So I hear. I don't know. I'm not going to take TikTok off.
I've heard about this. Word. So this was a section taken out of his book, and again, this is the whole thing of like, we've not read the whole chapter about it, but I didn't hear that he'd. But so I saw. God, this is like I heard, but I saw it was a tweet. It was a tweet of someone from Afghanistan or something, and they were saying, you know, those 25 people you killed, they all had families, they all wanted to go home, and that made me really sad, because I was like, you don't even think of it like that, do you? You just think, because we're taught that this is the enemy, that, you know, but you don't think of it as actually they've all got families to go to, and they, you know, they want to live a life too. And yeah, and it made me really sad when I read that, because I was like, God, I've never thought of it like that. But I don't know that he was boasting. I think it was that he was saying that he'd killed 25 people, but I just find it odd that you would, because Actually, I saw again on TikTok. God, this is so bad, isn't it? We should not. By the way, I don't recommend
listen to
anyone
TikTok.
to
TikTok's the
learn stuff
devil.
off TikTok. Yeah, don't do it. It's not good.
Blasphemy.
But like, it was a clip of people talking on a TV show about it, and they were saying, and they were in the army, they're in the forces, and they basically said that in the forces, it's a very unspoken thing. You don't ever say, "Oh, I killed this many people." It's a very much we did this as an army. I can't think of the word. As a team, we achieved this because of this, rather than, oh, how many people did you kill, kind of thing. And I listened to that and I was like, oh, I didn't realize that was the etiquette within the forces, but actually that sounds like a much better way to do it, because obviously it's a lot more respectful. So yeah, they were very shocked that he had mentioned how many people he'd killed, because it's such an unsensitive thing to discuss. But it's so but this is what I mean. And because of social media, we're fed so many different things. We're fed like this thing saying, oh, he did this. And then, well, actually, no, this wasn't true. And then you learn that some things were never true. And actually, yes, it did go viral on TikTok, or yes, it did go viral, but it doesn't mean it's true. And this is actually a closing subject I want to talk to you about, because I love asking people about this. But what's your views on social media? Because I feel like, I mean, this is a perfect example. Like, so we've made judgments on Harry based on TikTok. Isn't that so sad? Like, what? Don't you think it's turned into such a toxic place?
No, well, see, like, I still love Harry. He will always be the first ginger boy that I've had a crush on for years.
I can't blame Meghan at all. Like, who wouldn't want to fuck Prince Harry? Let's be honest, right? Come on, like, he is hot as fuck.
He's
like,
the reason why I've got my streak. You've seen all my ex-boyfriends. There is a pattern.
But it's just like, even in the documentary, it sounds so bad, I shouldn't say this because it's a serious documentary, but like, even when he looks at Meghan, he's like looking at it, you can tell he loves her. I'm just like, oh, I wish he'd look at me like that. He is hot as fuck. Of course he is. And he always was the hotter of the brothers. There was a point where actually William was probably a little bit hotter, and then he lost.
But then he
used
to have the bald patch, and then it was close.
He had such nice hair as well, and then he lost it, and he just lost his looks a little bit. But Harry's always had that bit of a like,
even with his thinning, it's still working for him right now.
Yeah.
Still all right.
Yeah. I mean, it's not thinning loads, but like, it's still,
it's getting there.
It's a vibe, isn't it? Like, you know how like some guys just have a vibe, like an aura around them. You know, when you even get like like Danny Dyer, for example. Do you think Danny Dyer is sexy? Like,
I think he's
if
hot.
you look at him, he's not sexy, but there's something about him.
Yeah.
It's that aura that he gives. He's just like a bit of a like Jack the Lad, and you're like, oh, throw me in bed, daddy. Do you know what I mean? But anyway, oh God, where were we? I've gotten all hot and flustered. I don't know where we are. Yeah, what's your views on the Instagram cancel culture, the toxicity of social media? What's your views on it?
I've taken on a very good approach that's helped me sift through social media. If I don't like something, I scroll. I don't need to leave a comment on it. I don't need to share it and say, oh, I hate this. If I have an opinion something, it's likely that I will go back to the WhatsApp groups and be like, guys, look at this, and we'll have a discussion about it. It doesn't need to be aired back on the same thing. And I just think sometimes it can be a great place, and sometimes it can be just a not nice place. And
I always make jokes about this, but exactly what you just said. When did we stop bitching behind each other's backs rather than doing it in their comments? Go to your group chat and bitch about it there like a normal fucking person. Right. Like, if someone does something stupid, like I've seen posts where people have posted something and I've just thought, what the fuck are they talking about? Or they're crazy. What are they doing? I nowadays, like, I wouldn't comment and go crazy at them. Actually, there was a time there, and I've talked about this on the podcast before, so I can say it openly, but Zariah posted something that was a bit transphobic, let's say. She did take it down, but she posted something that's transphobic, and I didn't go on and just attack her. I just said, listen, I was like, Zariah, maybe you should take this down, because it's not making you look good, and I know you probably didn't intend for it to look like that. And I then messaged her just to be like, hey, I just wanted to reach out, because I don't want people to think of you this way. And that's the only time that maybe I would, is if it's someone maybe that I like and I don't want them to be perceived in the wrong way.
Yeah.
But I would never, like, I have done, and I've spoken to you about it before. I've done hate campaigns before. It never works well. And God, years ago now, I can't remember how long. That must have been over 6 years ago. And I used to just be like, like if I didn't agree with something, I'd post it everywhere and be like, "Oh, look at this! This is wrong."
Dan versus the world.
But nowadays, I've just realised that it's just not worth it. It's not worth it because you're never going to get 100% of people support you, because there are people posting racism on social media and there's people supporting them. There's always going to be someone who is going to join that negativity. So whether something is super wrong or not, like when you mentioned earlier on about the George Floyd thing, well, you remember all the posts about it and how many people tried to defend the police after that. Isn't that just crazy to think there's people
I rolled, and that's what I was very very happy to say that I'm proud to be black. I like all the good stuff, and my hair is now completely natural since George Floyd, because I don't know, I feel like I went through a life change when that happened. It's just, I think in the society that I've been in, like my mum's had relaxed hair. For those of you who do not know what relaxed hair is, it's when you basically put a chemical on very, very curly 4B, 4C, maybe even 4A hair, and it becomes basically very dead straight, similar to white hair. So that's what
it's chemically straightened, isn't it? It's like using it,
Exactly. Yeah. So that's what she's done her whole life. And so I went through relaxers, I went through braids, I've gone through weaves, I've gone through wigs, I've gone through the works. Whereas I feel like
I haven't done one wig though. There's one that I haven't done.
Dan's trying to get me to have a pussycat wig like Monet Exchange.
I just want you to live your Monet Exchange moment. Why is that such a crime?
Actually, have you seen the meme that's going around? And it's what's the song? And she's like has her wig on and she takes off and it's the exact same wig. You
need to send me that, because I'm just obsessed with Monet Exchange anyways, and I just love her pussycat wigs. So I just think, so whenever you talk to me about wigs, I'm like, well, you haven't worn all the wigs, have you? And you're like, Dan, I'm not going to wear a pussycat wig.
I think my locks are too long now for it to fit underneath, but they'll be all bumpy and gross.
It is good to see that things have changed, and I still think they've got a long way to go.
Definitely.
And I, as someone who feels like I really try my best to do the work and to learn, and I'm always trying to listen, and I still learn so much all the time. Like sometimes people post stuff, and I'll be like, God, I didn't know that. Little things, like sometimes there were things that even my stepmom will sometimes say to me, and I'll be like, you've never told me that before, and it's just. Yeah, I feel like it's a constant learning process. Have you seen Till, by the way?
No.
So actually, this is another movie that's just come out recently that's about very much focused on. It's like back in the day, about racism back in the day, and about, I think it was a kid that got killed, and the mum. It was based on a true story and stuff, and I'm going to see that this weekend. I'm really excited. But that's why I asked it, because I was like, talking of this sort of subject, actually, have you seen it? And I think I'm going to learn so much from that as well, because there's so much in the history. So really, I mean, for anyone listening to this, go and learn, and like follow as well more Black Pole dancers. Like I'm always sort of like watching the pages of all the black people that I follow, because whenever they post any educational stuff, I feel like it's really fun to learn. Not even just because I feel like I have to, it's more just because I actually find it really interesting to learn. It's nice to learn about. So I encourage anyone who has learned anything from today at all to go and do some more, go and learn more. So tell me now, Shan, before we like wrap up and finish off, give me a few names of people that you think people should go and follow, that are not only educating people, but also are just fucking amazing.
Okay. Twerkology Nation, for starters. Patricia, the Tears. Beanie Legit. Can't believe it's only taken me till now to put her out there. Alabama Whirly, for those of us. I know that she's happy for me to call her fat, but I feel very not there yet.
What's her name?
Alabama.
What's her name again?
Her real name, I don't know if I can say her real name on. I don't know if we can shout her out that, but her Instagram is Alabama Whirly.
Yeah.
So there's her. I've got so many other people. There's Dalton, and if you lot are not following Dalton, I don't know what you're doing, because he is amazing.
I love Dalton. Does Dalton use he/him pronouns, by the way?
That is a good question.
I don't know.
I think so. We will go to our good friend Instagram to check.
Yeah, I literally just thought that. I didn't want to say he's amazing because I was like, oh, I don't know. Other people that I recommend. I mean, if you want to talk about if you want to see some amazing black talent, you've got to check out Bentley Rebel, which obviously we mentioned already. Anna Kia, Jazzy I always say Jazzy the Polar. Jazz the Polar. Jazz the Polar. Carmine Black, yeah. There's so many good black pole dancers. You know, Phoenix Casri's been around for years, right? Phoenix actually was one of the first black pole dancers I ever knew about. Yeah, well, because she was one of the first big names that was a black pole dancer for me that I learned about, and that's when it kind of all went off from there. But yeah, I mean, just like you said, it doesn't take you long. If you throw a stone, you're going to land on some amazing black polars. Trust me, just keep looking, you'll find them. So go and do it. Go and do it now. I was going to say, go and follow mcchanningtonratchet. I will be putting her Instagram handle in the bottom of this podcast. So go and check out the description. It will be there. But Shan, thanks for coming on. I love talking to you because I feel so comfortable talking to you about subjects like this because I know you, and I know I wouldn't feel comfortable talking to anyone else about this. I'd be too worried about maybe saying the wrong thing, but I always feel comfortable talking to you, and I've learned so much, and I hope anyone else listening to this has also learned so much. So please do go and follow Shan. If you haven't done it already, go and do it now. How dare you? And yeah, Shan, thank you so much.
Oh, you're welcome.
Let's do it again soon, yeah?
Yes.
And I'll see you at the studio sometime soon as well.
Yes.
Bye then. Bye. Thank you so much for listening to this podcast. Really hope you enjoyed it. And remember, I'm always trying to find new guests. So if you have someone that you want to hear from, you want to hear their story, send me a message. I'm ready and waiting for your message. I want to learn who you want to know and who you want to get to know on this podcast. So send me a DM on Instagram and hopefully we'll get them on the podcast. See you next time.
If you're not getting any and you want some tea, then come and join Dan up on the wheel.